Let's face it, many fantasy writers are completely misunderstanding what makes dwarves compelling. Over 20 years of writing and studying fantasy literature have taught me that the key to creating memorable dwarven characters lies far beneath the surface, and I don't mean in some cliched underground kingdom. In this video, I'll show you how to tap into the hidden depths of dwarven psychology, craft unique cultural elements that go beyond mines and forges, and weave complex relationships that will breathe life into your dwarven societies. But first, I'm going to reveal the single most damaging myth about dwarves that's holding countless fantasy worlds back right now. And for that, you need to understand dwarven history. Picture this: a stout bearded figure, hammer in hand, toiling away in dimly lit forges deep within a mountain. Sound familiar? This iconic image of dwarves has captivated readers for generations. I love it, you probably love it, most people love it. After all, the dwarves that Tolkien made famous with characters such as Gimli from Lord of the Rings have long reached legendary status. But here's the kicker: if this is all your dwarves are, you're barely scratching the surface of their potential. The roots of dwarven folklore stretch back centuries, woven into the fabric of Norse mythology and European fairy tales. These skilled craftsmen, often portrayed as guardians of underground treasures, have captured our imaginations for good reason. But somewhere along the way, many writers got stuck reducing these fascinating creatures to one-note caricatures. They mistakenly believe that adhering strictly to tradition is enough to create compelling characters. And this simplistic view ignores the vast potential for depth and nuance in dwarven societies. To illustrate this, let me introduce you to Grimoire Stonefist. At first glance, Grimoire seems like a typical dwarf. He's a skilled smith who works in the great forges of Ironheart. But Grimoire has a secret passion. He's an amateur historian obsessed with uncovering the lost tales of his people. What's more, Grimoire is a pacifist, believing that violence should always be a last resort, a stance that often puts him at odds with his more martial kin. So why do these traits make Grimoire a more nuanced dwarf in my opinion? Well, his passion for history shows a depth beyond mere craftsmanship, highlighting the rich cultural heritage of dwarves. It suggests a people with a complex past, full of stories waiting to be told, while his pacifism challenges the stereotype of the battle-hungry dwarf, showing that even in a martial culture, diverse philosophies can emerge. Yet despite being less typical, these traits still fit within dwarven culture. Grimoire's love of history stems from the dwarven reverence for tradition and ancestors, and his pacifism can be seen as an extension of the dwarven appreciation for creation over destruction. These aspects of Grimoire's character don't reject his dwarven nature, they add depth to it. Now that we've identified the key mistake in dwarven character creation, let's tackle the stereotypes that often plague these beloved fantasy stables. First up, the always drunk warrior. Yes, dwarves are often associated with a love of good ale, but reducing them to constantly inebriated brawlers does them a disservice. While there's nothing wrong with a dwarf enjoying a well-earned drink after a hard day's work, making this their defining characteristic ignores the potential for depth and nuance. Next then, we have the one-track mind miner. While it's true that many dwarves have a deep connection to the earth and its riches, painting them all as single-minded treasure hunters overlooks the complex economic systems and diverse professions that would exist in any thriving society. Grimoire's passion for history demonstrates that dwarves can have intellectual pursuits that go beyond mere material wealth. Finally, there's the Scottish accented blacksmith. This trope born from pop culture representations has become so ubiquitous that it's almost a parody of itself. While there's nothing inherently wrong with a dwarf having a particular accent, using it as a shorthand for an entire race fails to consider the rich potential for unique dwarven cultures and dialects. These aforementioned stereotypes are limiting because they reduce dwarves to caricatures rather than fully realized characters. They ignore the potential for individual personalities, diverse motivations, and complex societal structures. By avoiding these stereotypes, or even better yet, subverting them thoughtfully, you open up a world of possibilities for your dwarven characters. Now that we've cleared away the cobwebs of shallow stereotypes, let's dig into the rich foundation of dwarven culture. This is where your world building skills can really shine, creating societies that honor classic dwarven themes while adding new layers of complexity and interest. Let's start with societal structures. The idea of a king under the mountain is a powerful one in dwarven lore, But have you considered the intricate political systems that might support such a monarchy? Perhaps your dwarves have a complex system of noble houses, each specializing in a different craft or being responsible for a different aspect of subterranean life. Or maybe they have a meritocratic system where master craftsmen form a council to advise the king. How might a society like this view someone like Grimoire, whose pacifist ideals might clash with traditional dwarven martial values? In Grimoire's clan, for instance, they are ruled by a king, yes, but the real power lies with the council of guild masters. Each master represents a crucial aspect of dwarven society: mining, smithing, engineering, and so on. Grimoire's historical research has led him to believe that in ancient times there was also a lore master on this council. His quest to reinstate this position drives much of his character's story and conflict. Now, this political structure influences the diversity of professions within dwarven society as well. While mining and smithing are crucial, of course, they're just the tip of the iceberg. What about dwarven engineers who design intricate cave systems and underground cities? Or dwarven alchemists who've mastered the art of brewing not just ale, but powerful potions and explosives? Consider historians like Grimoire, or even dwarven diplomats and mediators inspired by pacifist philosophies. These myriad professions in turn then shape the customs and traditions of dwarven culture. Maybe your dwarves have elaborate coming-of-age rituals that involve crafting a unique item that represents their skills and aspirations. Or perhaps they have a tradition of carving their family histories into the walls of their homes, turning each dwelling into a living record of lineage and achievement. By developing these unique cultural elements, you're not just creating window dressing for your story. You're building a rich, believable world that will resonate with your readers and provide endless opportunities for conflict, growth, and surprise in your narrative, all while staying true to the essence of what makes dwarves such compelling fantasy characters. But let me switch gears for a bit here. When you think of a dwarf, what image springs to mind? Short, stout, with a flowing beard, I imagine? The same would probably be true for me as well. But while these are classic features, there's so much more to explore when it comes to dwarven physicality. Let me start with height and build. Yes, dwarves are typically shorter than humans, but there is room for variety. Consider a range of heights and body types within your dwarven population. Maybe those who work the great forges have more muscular builds, while scouts and explorers tend to be leaner and more agile. Take Grimoire for instance. As a smith, he has the strong arms and calloused hands you'd expect from a forge worker. But his passion for history has shaped him too. Years of poring over ancient texts and scouring abandoned mines have given him keen observant eyes that miss no detail. His beard, while full and proud, is kept neatly trimmed to avoid singeing it in the forge, a practicality that many of his tradition-minded kin frown upon. This blend of physical traits reflects both Grimoire's profession and his scholarly pursuits, making him a unique individual within his clan. And speaking of beards, while the flowing beard is a classic dwarven trait, there is room for variation here as well. Different clans might have distinct braiding patterns that signify lineage or achievement. Female dwarves might have elaborate hairstyles rather than beards, or perhaps beard growth is seen as a sign of wisdom in all genders, leading to interesting social dynamics. But as much as we could lose ourselves in the combing and styling of beards, physical diversity among dwarves isn't just limited to hair and build. Consider also the possibility of dwarven subspecies or regional variations. Dwarves who've lived for generations in volcanic regions might have heat-resistant skin and hair that never burns. Those dwelling near underground lakes could have slightly webbed fingers, better for swimming and diving for rare materials. Now, if you found anything useful in the video so far, please consider giving it a like to help me grow the channel. Thank you. Moving on. Just as physical characteristics can vary among dwarves, so too can their methods of communication. Language is the heartbeat of any culture, and dwarven societies are no exception. While the stereotype of the gruff, Scottish accented dwarf has its charm, there's so much more to explore in dwarven communication. Start by considering the environment in which your dwarves live. A language that developed in echoing caverns might be rich in consonants that carry well over long distances. Perhaps they have a complex system of pitched sounds that can convey meaning even when words are indistinct. However, dwarven communication isn't limited to spoken words. Consider non-verbal communication as well. In dark mines or noisy forges, dwarves might develop an intricate system of hand signals. Beard and hair ornaments could convey social status or personal achievements, a silent language readable to those in the know. Multilingualism then could also play a significant role in Dwarven societies. Dwarves who frequently trade with other races might be polyglots, fluent in a dozen surface languages, or perhaps as a sacred ancient Dwarven tongue used only for religious ceremonies or recording important histories. Remember, language evolves over time. An isolated Dwarven community might speak an archaic dialect, while those with frequent contact with other races might have a language peppered with loan words. This can be a great tool for conveying the history and connections of different Dwarven groups. By developing unique languages and communication styles for your dwarves, you're creating opportunities for misunderstanding, for secrets, for the untranslatable concepts that can drive a story forward in fascinating ways. Now, having said all this, let me take you on a journey into one of the most crucial aspects of character creation: psychology. Understanding the Dwarven mindset is key to writing authentic, compelling characters that resonate with your readers. So let's start with motivation. What drives your dwarves? Is it a cultural emphasis on craft and creation, a deep-seated need to leave a lasting legacy, or perhaps a complex relationship with the earth itself, viewing it both as a provider and a challenge to overcome? Just consider the impact of lifespan on Dwarven psychology. Dwarves are often depicted as long-lived. How might this affect their perception of time, their approach to relationships, or their long-term planning? A dwarf might view a decade-long project as a mere momentary diversion, while seeing the rapid changes in shorter life races as bewildering and chaotic. And beyond that, family structures and relationships offer another rich vein to explore. Are your Dwarven societies clan-based, with extended families living and working together? Or are they more individualistic, with young dwarves expected to make their own way in the world? How do these structures affect a dwarf's sense of identity and belonging? When crafting your Dwarven characters, don't shy away from exploring mental health. The pressures of living in enclosed spaces, the dangers of their professions, or the weight of tradition could all lead to unique psychological challenges. Maybe there's a culturally specific form of depression related to being away from stone for too long, or anxiety disorder stemming from the ever-present risk of cave-ins. By delving deep into Dwarven psychology, you avoid the risk of creating one-dimensional caricatures and allow for their individual personality to shine through. Building on our understanding of Dwarven psychology, let me explain how these mental and emotional traits manifest in Dwarven spirituality. Religion and spirituality can be powerful forces in shaping our culture, and Dwarven societies are ripe for exploration in this area. While the concept of a god of the forge is a classic in Dwarven lore, there is room for so much more depth and complexity here. First, consider the environment in which dwarves live. A race who spends much of their time underground might develop a complex cosmology based on the layers of the earth. Perhaps they believe in a great cosmic mountain of which their own peaks are merely a reflection, each layer representing a different aspect of existence. As an example, Grimoire's clan believes in the deep paths, spiritual journeys that mirror their physical delving into the earth. They see each mineral and metal as having its own spiritual significance. Grimoire's historical research has led him to uncover forgotten aspects of this belief system, putting him at odds with more orthodox religious leaders. The role of ancestors is particularly significant in Dwarven spirituality. With their long lifespans, dwarves might have a much more immediate connection to their history. Perhaps they believe the spirits of their ancestors reside in the stone around them, offering guidance and protection. This could manifest in rituals of carving family histories into cave walls, or the practice of carrying a small stone from one's birthplace as a connection to ancestral spirits. In that sense, consider also how Dwarven spirituality might interact with their craftsmanship. Maybe they believe that a piece of their soul goes into every object they create, leading to complex rituals around crafting and a reluctance to part with their creations. Or perhaps they view their work as a form of worship, striving to create beauty as a reflection of divine perfection. Leaving all this behind for a moment, let me bring up something entirely different next: technology. While dwarves are often associated with a medieval level of technology, there's no reason to limit their innovative spirit. So let me show you how Dwarven ingenuity can push your fantasy world into exciting new territories, while still honoring their traditional craftsmanship. Dwarves, as we know and love them, are renowned for their skill in mining and metalwork. But why stop there? Imagine Dwarven geomancers who've developed technologies to predict and prevent cave-ins, or dwarven alchemists creating new alloys with almost magical properties. For instance, in Grimoire's world, his clan has developed advanced forging techniques that allow them to create metal with their memory, swords that always return to their original shape, or armor that repairs itself over time. This innovation, born from studying ancient texts, has put Grimoire's forge at the forefront of dwarven craftsmanship. Interestingly, Grimoire's pacifist beliefs have led him to adapt these techniques for non-military applications as well, such as self-repairing support beams for mines. Consider also how dwarven innovation might extend to other fields. What about dwarven acousticians, who've mastered the properties of sound in caverns, creating instruments that can be heard for miles underground? Or dwarven agriculturalists, who've developed methods to grow crops in the darkness of their underground realms? Maybe a group of forward-thinking dwarves has developed early steam power using heat from deep thermal vents. The essence of what I'm saying here is, don't be afraid to push the boundaries of what's typically considered dwarven technology. There simply is too much room for exciting yet authentic dwarven storytelling. Now, if you're hungry for even more practical tips, make sure to sign up for my free weekly newsletter, because it's packed with bite-sized actionable advice to transform your world building and fantasy writing in just 5 minutes a week. You can find the link in the description below. Moving on, after building such a rich foundation for our dwarven characters, let me tell you more about how they interact with each other and the world around them. This is where your characters truly come to life, through their relationships, conflicts, and growth. Let's start with interspecies relationships. How do your dwarves view other races? Perhaps different dwarven clans have varying attitudes. Some might be eager to share their craft with the world, while others guard their secrets jealously. Relationships are not limited to interactions with outsiders though. Consider also the potential for complex conflicts within dwarven society itself. How do different guilds or clans interact? Is there competition for resources or prestige? Maybe there is tension between traditionalists who want to preserve ancient ways and progressives pushing for change. Family dynamics can also offer another rich area for exploration here. In a long-lived society, how do multiple generations coexist? Perhaps there's a cultural expectation for young dwarves to forge their own path before returning to take up family responsibilities. Or maybe family lines are so important that every decision is made with centuries of future generations in mind. Lastly then, consider how individual dwarves might break free from those societal norms. How are eccentrics and nonconformists viewed? This can be a great source of conflict and character growth. Now, we've covered a ton in this video already, so let me bring it all together by looking at some examples of compelling dwarven character arcs. First, we have the traditionalist journey. A dwarf deeply rooted in ancient ways is forced to adapt when a crisis threatens their clan's survival. Their arc involves learning to balance tradition with necessary change. Then we have the outcast's return. A dwarf exiled for breaking with tradition must return to save their clan, forcing them to reconcile with their past and find their place in dwarven society again. We could also consider the innovator's struggle. A forward-thinking dwarf pushes the boundaries of dwarven craft, facing opposition from conservatives while trying to prove the value of their innovations. Or you might like the diplomat's challenge. A dwarf must navigate complex interspecies politics, challenging their preconceptions and potentially changing their clan's relationship with the outside world. Grimoire's character arc weaves together elements from each of these examples, showcasing the depth and complexity possible in dwarven characters. As a pacifist historian in a traditional martial society, he embodies both the innovator's struggle and the diplomat's challenge. His journey involves reconciling his unconventional beliefs with his deep respect for dwarven traditions. So the next time you sit down to craft a dwarven character, remember Grimoire. Let his story inspire you to look beyond the surface, to challenge stereotypes, and to create dwarves that are as deep and complex as the caverns they call home. And since metals play such a crucial role in most dwarven societies, watch this video here next where I walk you through 5 legendary metals that can serve as inspiration for the dwarves in your world.